Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin. Thursday, October 5th, 2017, around 8:15 a.m. Empire State Building shot. Here's a good one. I have to tap. Oh, no, I don't. I guess I can do it with the autofocus. Sometimes I have to tap, sometimes I don't. It's all about the APIs. And oh, how important the correct abstraction layers for interfacing between systems actually is. Does anyone remember the smartphone industry before the iPhone in 2007? I certainly do. I had a Sony Ericsson P910A. I can even remember down to the model number. It was using, I think, the Symbian or Symbian, I always get those two things confused, operating system. And it was using a variation of it that used a scroll wheel. So that was the main API. And it wasn't really until Apple implemented touchscreens with the whole pinch and zoom that they started to change the world in a real meaningful way. We were already carrying supercomputers, maybe not supercomputers, but mainframes around in our pockets by that time, and a whole host of smartphones, a lot of them using Windows CE. You remember that? And Steve Jobs infamously said that God gave us a pointer. This is it. We always have a stylus on us. And that's good if you're a finger painter. And yes, the iPhone has evolved to become the API for people who, are basically like first graders, kindergarten. Babies can use iPhones. It's a solid API appealing to the inner, lower level mammals that they are. Quite still high level mammals, but I'm pretty sure we could probably train chimps and gorillas to use iPhones as well. No doubt. I'm sure that's been done. There must be a study that's out there. But APIs work on all different levels. The human, spoken languages are an API, and English is a particular dialect of it. Or maybe I'm getting my terminology wrong. I guess language would be the channel and the media, sound and sound waves, space and compressed air, all that. And we're encoding into it sounds. Those sounds have meaning according to all kinds of lookup tables and pattern recognizers, so that the things that are encoded by talking can be decoded into people's brains. And then you have YouTube somewhere in the middle, so that those things can be captured, encoded about a zillion different ways, and transmitted about a zillion different ways. And what are the odds of you watching this now? There's about 50 of you who will. I don't know who all you 50 people are, but I've got some core following, which is really interesting. So, I'm not planning on disappointing. I am building towards something, and it's gradually solidifying in my mind, and I find these YouTube selfie videos probably the most convenient way to talk out loud and capture it and do a lot of idea capture on my way to work. And it occurs to me that a lot of people probably think I'm just doing video conferencing, FaceTime or whatever, which is not uncommon on the street with people talking to relatives as they are at New York on some sort of trip for school or work. And navigating the morning herd. Sometimes try and take these less congested little routes on the other side of bus stops and stuff. So APIs, abstraction levels, even the spoken language is it. And so, the future is already here. It's just not distributed evenly. Voice recognition has hit. We know that by how high quality real-time language translators are becoming. They actually have a fairly successful percentage, a fairly high success percentage. They're in like the 90% range. Now, sure, finishing out that last 10% may be the difference between calculators and our alien companions here on Earth that we created ourselves. Any artificial intelligence we create is us. It is an expression of us. We created it. This is why the Frankenstein monster stories are so popular. You know, God created man, man creates machine, machine destroys man, machine ascends to become God. So if you follow and subscribe to that narrative, you know, we got some bad times coming up as humans, but it doesn't have to be that way by a long shot. And many of the alternatives are actually interesting and pleasant. And they typically have to do with, you know, well, first, more even distribution, because just because the future's here doesn't mean it's here for everyone. And the cost of tech is coming down so dramatically, and even the ability to do ad hoc mesh networking that gets paid for by the sun. So it's really just a matter of some factory somewhere producing things at a sufficient economy of scale so that you can, you know, drop them from the sky in North Korea if you wanted to. And you know, the coup de grace, I'm not sure the expression, I gotta get my expressions right, but the real win would be including instructions on how to make more. If it was more of a specification than it was a particular product, and then the power of free and open source, and you get, you know, sufficient 3D printers, and you print out these things. And you learn how to do that by just reading the data from one of these things, and there you have the seed taking root and growing into a mighty tree or a fast-moving grass. Because if you want to know about life survival strategies, look at the difference between the grasses and the trees, and you will see which serves man how to the greater success likelihood. And you just got to look at the satellite images of the Earth and the deforestation and the farmland to understand humans value chopping down trees, which took hundreds of years to grow, for the one-time lumber hit of the people who want it now, who are living in the now, and the residual ongoing manna that planting crops in its place produces for the people of the land, including jobs. And the whole issue of poaching goes away because there's no wildlife there to poach. So you can see how just human nature, you know, being agricultural beings, you know, it's funny how they say agriculture created everything that's good about the world and civilization, and how at the same time it undermined many of the things about who we are that made us creatures who could cultivate the land. And that puts us permanently at odds with ourselves, with the boons of technology versus the costs and penalties that it comes with. The driving down of biodiversity, the taking up attitudes that the Earth was here long before us and it will be here long after us, so what does it matter what we do? Republican, anti-science views that is just this side of nihilistic. And nihilism actually being okay because it's actually hedonism, because you use up today's resources as fast as you can, and then you die and you win the game because you got to gobble up the food and be the big man on campus to a higher degree, consuming more resources for a longer period of time than anyone around you while you were there, anyone before you, and anyone who's likely to come after you. And the better you leave the place in a state of, fragmented disarray, internal bickering and confusion, the better it is for your legacy, because you will be looked back to in awe when everything was unified under some central authority for so long. Sure, the trains ran, but look at your freedoms. But then you have the Romans who, despite the terrible, penalties for non-compliance, also took in that ability to absorb other cultures and make them part of itself in a quilt-like heterogeneous tapestry. Do I have that right? That bought it quite a bit of time and quite a bit of security and quite a bit of power. So in differentness, there is differentness under your banner, there is strength. But it's hard to get to that point. It's a hard place to be, and it's hard one to keep, so one questions the wisdom of empire building in the first place. And we as individuals only, 80 to 100 years here, so what do you do in the meantime? Well, I'm watching a lot of Rick and Morty. That has some interesting worldview philosophies in there. You have no control over being born who you are. Nothing really matters while it happens, because there's infinite versions of you, and then it all just ends and nothing really matters, and that's quite a nihilistic view. So they also have a lot of fun. Layering on the fun and the humor on that is a way of saying that if it's so short-lived and transient and meaningless, which I don't buy into because the multiverse thing is a little iffy, then you might as well have fun and enjoy the now and know all the tricks of resetting things back to its original state. So it subscribes to this kind of notion that, you can do anything you want because there's a reset button between episodes. Well, the life we're living, there's not. And so you got to be very aware of those reset buttons, because achievement and accomplishment certainly does have a reset button. There's I guess it's Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour rule, or 10 years to achieve mastery, and that's if you're really focusing on that thing day after day. And I started on Python, I guess, in about 2010. That was the language selection process. I could have just as easily ended up on JavaScript had Node been around at the time. I looked at Helma and Rhino and all the other ways of running JavaScript on a server, and it was like, maybe it's just Google let me down. Maybe Node was around at the time. But anyway, I digress. I have been stung many times by tech. One way I put it is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times. What's going on? What am I doing wrong? Stop. Don't invest so quickly in something that's going to require 10,000 hours or 10 years to master if you don't think it's going to be around and relevant by then. See, this fad problem in tech is, what do you achieve mastery on? And a lot of people are like, oh, well, JavaScript itself in a text editor like Sublime. Well, guess what? Sublime, for those folks, I have, TextMate to say. Don't rely on proprietary tools. Vim is great to know. You will never be obsoleted in the ability to manipulate text files, which is all tech is anyway. It all comes down to manipulating text files and issuing commands for one thing that is an instruction runner, whatever it be, an interpreter or a compiler, to another thing which is the source data, to another thing which is the output. And everything is that, kind of 3-way interaction in tech, and it's all the same. And everything should really be the same and nothing should matter, because a Turing complete language, anything expressed in one can be expressed in the other. But that is a lie. Not that Turing complete isn't Turing complete, it's about the expression. So as technology advances and accelerates, and the hockey stick acceleration curve kicks in, and we're talking to things that convince us of the other Turing test. It convinces us it's aware, it's intelligent. You can talk machines into doing things. If it's smart enough to convince you it's human, there's going to be probably lesser, cheaper versions of it that will take your verbal instruction as if it were an assistant sitting by your side. So what does this mean for people learning Python today, or even Vim? The AI takes the place of Vim and makes the human language into the Vim language, and you have someone who can code Python. Think about having one of the Python core developers and people who really know all the tricks sitting at a keyboard typing as fast as you can tell them what to do, and you say, okay, give me a list, give me a nice variable name that represents what I'm trying to do. You can even use the AI to lean on for creativity if you wanted to. But at the end of the day, the need to program old school coding like we know it today does not go away with AI. AI is going to be for very particular purposes, and will only be able to be trusted with very particular things, and will only have so much granular control over, when the brush hits the canvas, what happens. So if you're expressing yourself in a machine automation language, which is not obsoleted merely by the existence of AI, people are still going to have to make recipes, build scripts, describe systems. Automation is automation, making things airtight, no memory leaks. AI will make for one heck of a garbage collector, so you'll never have to reboot a system. I'll buy that. But it cannot replace the envisioning of the system that needs to be created, and the first few passes to sort of flesh it out, to express that higher level abstraction language in a way that flows as naturally off the tongue and from our fingers onto the keyboard as it does in Python. So my hypothesis, whatever. I don't want to be known as, I don't even want to say it, malapropism, but the litmus test for whether you're focusing on this right work today, so that you yourself, middle management, is not obsoleted and AI'd and automated out of your job over the next 20 years, is based on how well you can describe systems at the level, at the right, business objective level, quality of life you wish to live level, as a human can. You have to make the broad first passes, almost like storytelling. The next level down, which is more granular, and I would argue is as granular as Python. And for people who really are comfortable with Python in such a text editor as Vim, and are as such on a timeless platform, something that is free of the fool me once, fool me twice dilemma in tech, then you are in a very good place. You will probably never be obsoleted, because so long as you're smart enough about all this automation stuff to argue with the AI that's trying to do itself that your way is better, and you can prove to it that you were right, you will have passed the reverse Turing test, proving that humans, given all the same input, can come up with more and better and more varied and creative solutions than a machine can, thereby continuing to justify the existence of humans. There's a good goal for you. So with that, I will wrap up. I'm just about to head into the office to try and finish up and put a bow tie on one of my more important automations designed to scale and to allow multiple instances of itself yeah, this is where I wrap up quick because I could just ramble on into the next adjacent conversation. Thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you soon. And don't forget to subscribe.